Jerry is a loving husband and father, and one of the only empathic and sensible human characters in the show. He represents the very weakest of humans, though because of those around him, and by comparison to other less than ordinary characters, is commonly relegated to less than a punchline, being often viewed by other characters as an obnoxious loser, a pathetic father, a pitiful husband, and overall useless human being. He is cinematically directed in a way that makes us, by comparison to other characters, believe he is after his own interests and other people's acceptance, which comically leads him to make mistakes that put him in danger. Even though his relationship with his wife, Beth, is strained, he still loves her no matter what and doesn't abandon her. This, in turn, is seemingly also why Beth always chooses Jerry in the end, despite the fact that they are polar opposites. His level of intelligence is both his greatest weakness on paper. However, it also provides him with a far more happy life than the all-knowing Rick. Jerry puts great value in things that Rick topically sees as inferior, such as love, relationships, and attachments to the physical world. Jerry tends to be meek, misguided, and sometimes cowardly in the face of most situations. He also has a habit of quitting when things get too difficult. Jerry's nature to give up in the face of adversity became problematic when he tasked Mr. Meeseeks with helping him to improve his golf game, and upon realizing that he was bad at golf, he quit trying to pursue his goals. This could also possibly be the reason why Jerry can't get a job or can't keep a job for a long time. He always gives up halfway. In the episode Something Rick This Way Comes, Jerry's insecurities lead to helping his son Morty on a science project, to which he stubbornly refuses to concede that Pluto is no longer a planet. This results in him and Morty being abducted to Pluto. Once on Pluto, they are greeted by King Flippy Nips and other Plutonians who hail Jerry as a confirmation bias scientist. At the end of the day, he tells them that Pluto is not a planet, after realizing his relationship to his son is more important than being right. Despite Jerry's character flaws, he always values his family above everything else. Despite being generally passive and weak most of the time, Jerry has the ability to channel the inner strength to face his fears, such as directly confronting the army of Mr. Meeseeks, destroying his and Beth's mythologues, and eradicating a bunch of Cronenbergs in Rick Potion No. 9 when he and his wife were being ambushed by them. Near the end of the Rickshank Rickdemption, Jerry took a stand against Rick's toxic and controlling behavior towards the family, namely his apparent manipulation of Beth's father issues in order to live rent-free and his frequently putting his children in danger. Even still, Beth wound up defending Rick due to her abandonment issues in hopes that he wouldn't leave her again and filed a divorce with Jerry. They later got back together. Jerry also appears to be fond for pop culture, as shown in episodes like Rixie Business, where he goes on a Titanic-themed honeymoon with Beth, much to her chagrin, and in Close Rick Counters of the Rick Kind, where he collects a secret stash of R2-D2-themed coins. Jerry met his future wife Beth in high school and had unprotected sex on prom night, resulting in the pregnancy that produced their first and only daughter, Summer. Afterwards, the two got married, and 3 years later, the couple had their second and only son, Morty. Their relationship is very rocky and strained due to the fact that both of them missed out on fulfilling their dreams due to poor decision-making when they were teenagers. Their relationship is further strained by Beth's relationship with her father, Rick, and her willingness to let the family put up with his antics. Jerry seems to still love Beth quite a lot, as shown in The Whirly-Durly Conspiracy, and tries hard to keep their marriage together, but finds Rick's frequent insults about their relationship hard to ignore. In Rixty Minutes, Jerry and Beth both get to see an alternate version of themselves in a different reality, and find themselves unsatisfied with their current lives, eventually deciding that splitting up would be inevitable. However, the alternate Jerry and Beth eventually realize that they are miserable without one another and get together after years apart. Seeing this renews Jerry and Beth's relationship, and they opt not to split up. Despite this revelation, the two of them continuously bicker with one another, to the point it got on Rick's nerves, and he sent them to an outworld marriage consoling facility in Big Trouble in Little Sanchez. It was stated by two different characters at the facility that they have the single worst marriage they have ever seen, as the two hate each other and yet they still cooperate. However, once again, they managed to resolve their differences for the time being and pulled together to survive, including their marriage, which Beth afterwards stated would last at least until Morty graduates high school. Still, after Jerry's bad decisions in Interdimensional Cable 2, Tempting Fate, he is mostly belittled by Beth throughout the season finale episode. Jerry does not consider Beth's profession as a horse surgeon to be all that big a deal, but tries not to mention it, saying, "Okay, let's not rehash that fight." In the Rick Shank Rickdemption, Beth decides to divorce Jerry, wanting to have Rick close to her instead of being married to someone who hates him. His reaction to this was never seen. In the Rick-Churian Morty date, Jerry is visited by his wife when she suffers from an identity crisis, and he reflects on a high school date they had, and she ends up kissing him as thanks, with them reconciling. They decide to get back together and hide from Rick, who still tracks them down, but begrudgingly accepts their choice. At the end, they are living together again, with both being happier, and Beth defended Jerry from Rick's insults, while he is shown smiling at her new independence to her father. In Children of Mort, Jerry and his wife came to blows after she sided with Rick. Jerry ultimately saved his wife from a deadly fall, though she rejected his offer of having sex. Despite this, Jerry was pleased to hear Beth voice gratitude at him saving her life, while criticizing Rick. In Solarix, Jerry is returned back to his home dimension, as is the original Jerry from the current dimension. The Beth from the Season 2 dimension never divorced, and holds an extreme amount of animosity towards Jerry, as does the rest of the family. When the family he has been with since Season 2 arrive, he is happy to see them and realizes the divorce may have been a good thing, as it helped him appreciate their relationship more. After returning home, the family meets Season 2 Jerry, who is just as cold and rude to Beth as Season 2 Beth was to Jerry, showing a sharp contrast between the Jerry from Season 2 and post-Season 2 Jerry. In Bethic Twinstinct, Jerry is the last to find out Beth cheated on him with Space Beth. He initially curls up into a ball like a bug, a function Rick installed into Jerry as a drunken request, but ultimately releases himself from it and has an argument. Beth admits guilt to Jerry for lying, while Space Beth states she doesn't owe Jerry any sort of explanation. Eventually, the argument turns into a threesome between himself, Beth, and Space Beth, to which Summer, Rick, and Morty hear from the dining room in horror. Jerry constantly finds himself lacking compared to his father-in-law Rick's intelligence and resents him to a degree. He is torn between wanting to disdain of Rick's adventures and join in and gain his father-in-law's approval. Jerry's life is frequently affected by Rick's shenanigans like the Meeseeks box, the parallel reality goggles, and Rick's machine that can stop time. Rick makes Jerry feel insecure about his intelligence and his marriage, causing Jerry to overcompensate in his efforts to prove he is better than Rick. Usually, in trying, his efforts don't prove to be successful. One of Jerry's insecurities is that his children look at Rick more favorably than him. One such instance of this is in Something Ricked This Way Comes, when he sees Morty asking Rick for help with his science project rather than him and insists that science fairs are traditionally a father-son thing. He becomes angrily defensive when he thinks Morty is going to ask Rick if Pluto is a planet. Jerry puts up with Rick to a degree because he knows how much it means to Beth that Rick is in her life after being absent for so long, and Rick, despite being constantly condescending toward him, does the same for Beth's sake, telling Ricks from the Citadel to unfreeze his daughter's idiot in close Rick counters of the Rick kind. The most significant development between Rick and Jerry takes place during a pity adventure in The Whirly-Durly Conspiracy. Morty believes Jerry is suicidal after his divorce and forces Rick to take Jerry out lest he kill himself. For the first time, Jerry actually seems to get along with Rick, and the two begin to bond, laughing and drinking together at the bar. However, the conversation turns sour when Rick inadvertently suggests his presence in the house is what caused Jerry and Beth to begin experiencing problems in their marriage. Following this, Jerry decides to follow through with a plot to kill Rick arranged by Risotto Groupon, but before it can be carried out, Jerry has a change of heart after Rick apologizes to him. Jerry saves Rick's life, but Rick quickly deducts Jerry had a hand in his attempted murder. The two argue, and Jerry blames Rick for taking his family. Rick tells him that he was the first one to take his family when he impregnated his daughter. He tells Jerry that Beth lost options because she felt sorry for Jerry. According to Rick, Jerry acts as prey but is a predator who uses other people for pity for him. Jerry seems to agree with Rick and take this into account, as he later attempts to be brave and save Rick's life, which works, albeit not as intended. Later on, back home, Jerry tells Rick that making people sorry for him is no longer his signature move, and Rick gives him a nod, implying the two have genuinely bonded and learned how to respect each other a little more. However, their relationship remains somewhat strained. This is further demonstrated when Rick pettily refuses to let Jerry into the Smith residence and get his bus pass and activates a security system to stop him from entering. In the ABCs of Beth, despite causing Jerry to leave the house, Rick still protects him from the alien hunter who was planning to kill him. This was either because of his grandchildren, Beth, or out of his own choice. During the events of the Rick, Chury, and Morty date, Jerry reconciles with Beth and moves back in with her and hides from Rick, though he still finds them. Face to face with Jerry, Rick admits that he planned on killing Jerry. However, he states no matter what, Jerry still has ties with the family. Jerry noted Rick had a lot of strength to admit that while Rick begrudgingly accepts Jerry back into the family and decides to stay with them, but now must watch what he says to Jerry due to Beth changing her outlook on things. During Claw and Hoarder's special Ricktims Morty, Rick goes to pick up Jerry and his talking cat after they are lost in Florida. When Rick analyzed the cat and looked through its history, he was horrified by what he saw. Jerry insisted he look too, despite the warnings of Rick, and was left traumatized after seeing. Rick told Jerry he could help him forget, but the latter declared someone has to remember what the cat did. Rick agrees and makes the sacrifice by choosing to remember what they saw whilst erasing the memory from Jerry's mind. This seems to demonstrate great care for Jerry, as the memories were enough to make Rick suicidal, yet he chose to retain them, despite them almost making Rick kill himself. In Star Mort Rick Turn of the Jerry, Rick saves Jerry and Beth from Tammy Guetterman. During this moment, it's confirmed Rick sees Jerry as family, as he quite literally refers to both Beth and Jerry as such. In Solarix, Rick ends up accidentally reminding Beth they need to pick up Jerry from his home dimension. He does, but sighs exasperated. When Season 2 Jerry chastises Rick for having Mr. Frundles, post-Season 2 Jerry was more concerned with what it was rather than being upset with Rick for it. In Bethic Twinstinct, Rick arrives to Thanksgiving dinner naked. When Jerry exasperatedly asks Rick to put clothes on, Rick mockingly refers to Jerry as patriarch. Later, when Jerry curls into a ball with a chitinous body, the rest of the family is horrified. However, Rick eventually recalls that he did this as a drunken request for Jerry. In the Jarek trap, the two engage in a petty argument after Jerry asks Rick for help in finding out if his rake is in their neighbor Gene's house. Jerry tells him off in the process, stating that his brain wouldn't have been wasted if only he had it. Insulted, Rick initiates a brain swap just to prove that people aren't born smart. However, this ends up on a brutal route with their blood and brain parts scattered all over the place, as their own brains were not able to handle each other's minds. The garage AI fixes the situation. However, it ends up in their personalities getting blended together. Surprisingly, the two bond really well. The one with Jerry's body also admits that, while Jerry himself may argue with and insult Rick, he still considers him a friend. Jerry keeps an eye out for Summer and proves to be rather approachable to her, like a father. In Look Who's Purging Now, Jerry tries bonding with his daughter Summer as he attempts to create conversation, only to be dismissed by a moody Summer. Later, he succeeds and talks to her about how much he enjoyed raising her and is proud to be her father, later revealed to be a trick to get Summer to loan him money to get by, as he was still unemployed. He does show some parental protectiveness being hurt when his daughter reveals she has had a boyfriend, Ethan, for some time and has not informed him of the relationship, and then being upset as the two blatantly make out in front of him. In Children of Mort, Summer goes ballistic and scolds him for trying to bond with her in order to feel important, leaving him hurt. Later on, she and Morty realize Jerry was right about them not knowing everything. Jerry returned the sentiment by telling them they were right, something that left Summer shocked. Jerry loves his son Morty and only wishes for his success, academically and romantically. Jerry is often shown jealous of the time Morty spends with Rick, at one point even apologizing that he is not as smart as Rick. While Morty seems aware of his father's faults, he loves Jerry in return. In Something Rick This Way Comes, Morty fully admits that while Jerry isn't as smart as Rick, he states that Jerry is genius at being his dad, which causes Jerry to smile. During the Rickshank Rickdemption, Morty was upset to hear that his parents were going to divorce. As seen in Raising Gazorpazorp, Jerry seems to be amused when Morty's parenting plans don't go his son's way, as when he watched Morty fail at parenting Morty Jr. In The Old Man in the Seat, Morty reveals that he thinks Jerry is a loser, but this was because he was upset that Jerry got him in a bad situation. Despite this turbulent standing in the Vat of Acid episode, Morty can be seen happy to see Jerry in his montage. In Children of Mort, Morty was annoyed by Jerry hosting a camping trip, but was stunned by Summer's ballistic shouting at Jerry and defended his father. Later on, Morty realized Jerry was right about them not knowing everything. Jerry returned the sentiment by telling them they were right, something that left Morty shocked. In the episode Total Rickle, the Smiths' house was infested by parasites that embedded memories into their heads so they can eat, sleep, and multiply in their homes. Sleepy Gary, one of the parasites, pretended to be Beth's husband, cheating on her with Jerry. Jerry and Gary were in a secret romantic relationship ever since their cruise. Their relationship seems to imply the possibility that Jerry could be bisexual or pansexual. That being said, Sleepy Gary and all his memories with the Smith family turned out to be fake, and the parasite pretending to be Sleepy Gary was killed. Jerry was so devastated by the loss of Sleepy Gary that he initially requested to be killed alongside him, claiming he wanted to be with Gary. However, not being a literal parasite, Jerry was spared. Jerry, alongside Beth, admitted he needed time to get over Sleepy Gary before becoming intimate with one another again.